Blazing Saddles star gave crew a little extra. Warner Brothers released one of its greatest films ever in 1974. It debuted on film and caused a tremendous stir, leaving an enduring impression that continues to this day. Hidden facts about Blazing Saddles are listed here. An unlikely appearance. Premieres of new films are notoriously ostentatious, filled with A-listers donning the priciest tailored suits and emerging from opulent vehicles. In contrast, guests arrived on horseback for this film, in keeping with its motif. Whatever helps you sleep at night. Warner Brothers chief executive Ted Ashley was not satisfied with the film that Brooks screened. Ashley surrounded Brooks and issued the following directive: eliminate the following: the N-word, the bean scene, the horse being punched, Lily Von Stupp, and the black sheriff saying "you're sucking my arm" or something similar. Everything has to be taken out. Brooks responded, "Excellent, they're all out." But rather than complying with the instruction, he discarded every note and left. Down you go. Film enthusiasts will likely remember the scene where the monstrous Mongo parked his horse in a no-parking zone and then came face-to-face with another horse rider. Then Mongo approached the horse with composure and struck it, causing both animals to fall to the ground. Evidently, Brooks did not spontaneously generate this segment. Instead, it drew inspiration from an anecdote he'd previously relayed from his former supervisor, Sid Caesar. Bad taste. Some observers deemed Mongo's knockout strike scene offensive, despite the fact it was deemed amusing. Animal rights activists were indignant at the horse's treatment, notwithstanding the absence of any physical harm to the horse. However, there were those who argued that a less intense violent scene could have been incorporated, one that would not have prompted others to speculate as the film did. Fortunately, the filmmakers were able to film the scenario without causing any damage to animals because they had trained horses to collapse at will. Getting the boot. Gig Young was placed in the role of the Waco Kid during the initial round of filming. An earlier scenario from the filming schedule featured the inebriated Waco Kid hanging from his cot and berating Bart. Upon observing the sequences, one might conclude that Young is an exceptionally gifted actor due to his remarkably accurate portrayal of intoxication. Nevertheless, the reality was that he was so inebriated that production was compelled to cease. Gene Wilder succeeded Gig after his termination. Young filed a breach of contract lawsuit against the studio many years later. Sleeping with the stars. Certain actors in the comedy film that depicted the defecation of ranchers approached their duties with great seriousness. One of them, Slim Pickens, who aspired to be Taggart, the leader of the violent gang that relentlessly terrorized the residents of Rock Ridge into abandoning their community. Slim resolved to truly embody his character by sleeping outside in the style of a genuine rancher. Moreover, he did so while carrying his Winchester, which constantly served as a reminder that he operates as a fugitive. What's in a name? A critical aspect on which the authors encountered considerable disagreement was the title. This film was originally titled 10 Acts, which was a preliminary title and a reference to Malcolm X. Nevertheless, this was ultimately modified to Black Bart. The authors continued to dislike it despite this modification and considered the Purple Sage as an alternative potential name. Subsequently, while in the shower, Brooks conceived the title Blazing Saddles. Following his wife's approval, the rest became history. Reach for the sky. Sheriff Bart was, contrary to conventional belief, an unpopular figure. Amazingly, he placed a pistol on his head in an attempt to gain the freedom of the villagers. Brooks initially derived this concept from an incident that transpired during his youth. Mal attempted to pilfer a water pistol and a pack of gum from a store when he was a child. Little Mel threatened the attendant with the discharge of the trigger as he pointed the gun at him when he attempted to stop him. A room full of crickets. Warner Brothers held the belief that Brooks was capable of rekindling the enchantment that he had generated in the film The Producers. However, early reviews of the film were unfavorable, and studio executives were concerned that the film was not humorous in nature. Brooks remained optimistic, however, that the film would be a commercial success. All that remained was to release it to the general public. In the end, Warner Brothers agreed to release the movie, and the initial response amply justified their optimism. A stingy studio. Prior to the film's release, Brooks was compelled to exert considerable effort in persuading the studio of its potential. "The American public simply cannot tolerate its vulgarity," stated the director of distribution. "We should abandon it and incur a loss." President John Calley made the decision at this juncture to initially distribute the film in specific cities. New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago were among these locations. At the conclusion of the summer, the film had become the most successful release from the studio. Bringing in a comedic genius. While concurrently working on the screenplay for Blazing Saddles, Brooks was developing a television program called Your Show of Shows. During his tenure in New York, he was inspired to create the concept after witnessing Richard Pryor perform at the Vanguard nightclub one evening. The duo struck it off shortly after meeting the comedian, and Brooks offered Pryor a role. The remainder is history. Pryor was indispensable to its success. He wrote the majority of Mongo's dialogue. The Gridiron Gang. The dispatch of Mongo by Harvey Korman's Hedley Lamar might not have been effective in removing Sheriff Bart from his post. In contrast, Alex Karras enjoyed tremendous success as a football player during his prime. Karras accrued an astounding 12 seasons of NFL service. Karras was named to the NFL's All-Decade team in the 1960s and appeared on the All-Pro team 9 times. Additionally, he was a 4-time Pro Bowler who pursued an acting career after departing the Detroit Lions, initially joining the cast of Webster. The franchise that never was. With his humorous screenplay, Andrew Bergman contributed significantly to the success of Blazing Saddles. After the film's tremendous success, his contributions were utilized to develop new projects, including the television series Black Bart. Louis Gossett Jr. played Bart in the pilot, which had its premiere on April 4, 1975. Unbelievably, production continued on the program even though it was never aired to the public. This was due to the contractual provision mandating that the program be produced as a legitimate sequel. Musical chairs. Concerning unconventional approaches, Brooks has consistently demonstrated remarkable ingenuity. This was undoubtedly the case when he decided to use foreground music rather than the more prevalent background music. As a consequence, he selected Count Basie, one of the finest band conductors in existence. In the film, he employed Basie and his ensemble to perform the composition April in Paris. Surprisingly, Brooks also wrote the film's theme song, which Frankie Lane ultimately sang. Your Name is My Name. Mel Brooks had crafted Hedley Lamar, the ideal antagonist for Blazing Saddles. Regrettably, the name of his character exhibited an uncanny similarity to that of a renowned actress whose contract with MGM spanned the years 1930 to 1950. His resemblance to Hedy Lamar's name, which Harvey Korman had quipped would result in a lawsuit, failed to impress Lamar. The dispute did so, but the parties managed to resolve it amicably. A child arrived just the other day. Max Brooks, the son of Mel Brooks, was born approximately during the time he began working on the script for Blazing Saddles. At that time, Brooks was slightly strapped for funds, so he felt obligated to ensure the film's success. While avoiding the appearance of selling out by accepting any old project, he admitted to feeling a little like Charles Dickens when it came to accepting a project for the sake of money alone. Brooks was therefore determined to ensure that the film was successful. The Uninvited Extra. As the film draws to a conclusion, Sheriff Bart and the Waco Kid are pursued across the Warner Brothers film's backlot in an iconic scene. The moment they burst through the gates, the suspension of disbelief was broken, and with the exception of one individual, everyone turned right. That individual encountered the set by chance and was a random pedestrian who failed to comprehend the directives to vacate. Following his consent to the appearance, Brooks allowed him to remain. You're fired. Madeline Kahn had already secured a role in the film adaptation of Mammy before Blazing Saddles commenced production. Mammy, an adaptation of the Broadway musical, featured B. Arthur and Lucille Ball in leading roles. Mammy dismissed Madeline the day before she commenced work on Blazing Saddles. Ball asserted that Kahn intended to be dismissed for delivering a subpar performance so she could concentrate on portraying Lily von Stupp. There's magic in the air on Broadway. Following the Broadway success of The Producers, he was approached regarding the possibility of bringing Blazing Saddles to the Great White Way. Brooks conceives as a strategy, but he's concerned that the explicit content will no longer be well received. He stated, "This material is quite hilarious, employing the N-word. Although I wouldn't hesitate to do it, I'm not sure if I could possibly get away with it. When that occurred, I managed to escape punishment." He stated, "I'm not sure if I could get away with it today. If I may say so myself." Mel Brooks' witty Blazing Saddles had garnered numerous accolades. He could not help but to declare that it is, without regard to decorum, one of the funniest films of all time. Brooks stated, in comparison to Some Like It Hot, "Billy Wilder's film is hilarious, but scene for scene, my film contains more chuckles. It would be inappropriate for me to say so, but I seriously believe this is the funniest motion picture ever produced." Legging it out. Brooks had Madeline Kahn in mind when he conceived of the character Lily von Stupp, as he was certain of her comedic prowess. However, Brooks requested to see her legs when she arrived to audition for the role. Kahn surmised that he had ulterior motives and remarked, "Oh, you're that sort of individual." Brooks subsequently elaborated that the character's need for attractive legs was a parody of Marlene Dietrich. Although she comprehended, she cautioned him, abstain from contacting. The choice: Pryor or Cleavon? Mel Brooks initially intended to cast Richard Pryor, a comedian, in the role of Sheriff Bart. Mel exclaimed in awe of the comedian, characterized him as the most endowed with talent. However, Pryor is a highly controversial individual due to the explicit nature of his writings and his near-fatal substance abuse problems, which nearly caused him to commit suicide by burning himself to death. Despite this, Brooks continued to desire Pryor. However, the studio proposed Cleavon Little. Upon observing Little's impeccable delivery of the lines, Brooks cast Cleavon in the role.